On today's game, is just getting back to analysing the game. Donny here says the line not as high anymore seems a more controlled press too. Are you noticing that in terms of the game today, your defensive line is sitting a little bit deeper and it's stopping you from being so vulnerable maybe?
I think
No.
Okay. I to be honest with you, I don't even think the high line is the right way to look at it. I think that we're not nearly as wasteful. I think last season we kind of got caught out with our pants down when we had the ball in the opposing third, right? We got a little bit too ahead of ourselves. We were wasteful. We had sloppy turnovers, and then we would get found out on the counter because we weren't really getting broken down. And I really think that that's just down to the fact that we had too many men forward. We were basically relying on Konate and Virgil to cover 4 players in front of them, right? I mean, Arsenal is a great game to look at. People were flaming Konate. It's like, but he's getting attacked by Havertz and Martinelli, and it's a 2-on-1 every single time. It's no wonder that he finally had a red card. So when you're less wasteful, you're not going to have as many counterattacks. And when you're more controlled in possession, players are going to be in better positions. So I think that a lot of the defensive stability that we have comes from the stability that we have in possession through these first 2 games. I don't think that the line is as high, but also I think that everyone's just doing.
We're still playing a high line though, because we keep a lot of possession. We still are playing a high line.
100%. But if we don't turn over the ball sloppy, then it doesn't become an issue, right? And we're not doing that, and we're very quick to pass it back, which I'm happy with.
Sorry, I'll come to you in a second. No, I think this is really good because sometimes, and it's great analysis, because sometimes the higher line is the symptom as opposed to potentially the problem, as an example. And this is what you just said. Someone's put a stat in I didn't know about, but Liverpool completed 92% of their passes in today's game. Their best passing accuracy in the Premier League since 2003, 2004. So in 21 years, today was your most accurate game in terms of pass completion. So you're right. If you're losing the ball less in dangerous areas with a higher line, you're not going to be attacked as much. And we've seen that Chelsea's problem in pre-season in the first half today. They invert their fullbacks and they lose the ball in dangerous areas, and then there's big fucking holes that teams can run through. Second half, they were in a more rigid position. They moved the ball quicker. They weren't being caught in possession, and they sliced through Wolves. So really, it's definitely. I think it's worth, especially for non-Liverpool fans. Watch it when it comes to Liverpool, and that's a Dutch thing. Like, and so when you think of Dutch football, you do think about it being a, generally speaking, teams that are better in possession. So yeah, it's a really good bit of analysis there, Mike. Hassan, what were you going to say, bruv?
I was going to say, genuinely, just to kind of like test out this whole thing, I wish we played Man United this week, or a team at least of higher quality. Because let's be honest, Ipswich or Brentford are, like Brentford at home and Ipswich away, probably 2 games you expect Liverpool to win anyway. I wish we were tested, tested against a tougher opposition, in which we could really genuinely micro-analyze these points, because obviously we're keeping possession better, we're passing the football better, because that's never been, Klopp didn't give a shit about the football, to be honest with you. So that's never been his thing. But for me, I just wish we played a tougher opposition, because what happens to Gravenberch when it's Bruno, Mainu, and whoever? What happens to Gravenberch when it's Rice, Odegaard, etc.? What happens to Gravenberch when it's Rodri, Gundogan? That's what I wanted to see, just so we can see him under that pressure of playing out of a City press or a United press or an Arsenal press or a Chelsea press or etc. So I can't believe I included Chelsea in that, but yeah, in those type of oppositions. So, but the problem is next week, if it does go to the shits like it did 2 years ago, transfer window is closed already, so we're gonna have to just hold it for 4 months essentially.
Yeah, but it also, again, listen, we'll be previewing it in the week, but Man United, even based on both our performances in the first 2 games of the season, Man United can beat Liverpool next week. That isn't even a weird take if somebody thinks and feels. Yeah. You might get beat, but it have nothing to do with slot system not working or the fact that you haven't been out. Yeah. Again, you could argue if you went and bought 4 world-class players, you could argue that could make a difference, but you're never going to do that. So you may even lose and it not be because you don't have a 6. It might just be a really close game. And in the last 2 minutes, Trent makes a weak back pass and we run through and score. So I think that what fans have got to learn to do sometimes, and we're on a match reaction. So yes, we talk about wider issues. But sometimes we take something that happens in a particular game. I saw people yesterday saying Xerxes reminds me of Lukaku. Why? Well, Lukaku did stupid things like he knew he'd be offside and he'd go and touch the ball. I said, okay, but I'm not getting the comparison because Lukaku did that about 4 times in one season where he was clearly offside, shouldn't have touched the ball, but he still ran towards it and did it. He went, well, because Xerxes touched the ball and it was going to go over the line.
It wasn't even his fault. He tried to get his knee out of the way.
I was like, but he couldn't help it. There's nothing he could do. He put every ounce of energy to trying to get onto that ball, right? And he didn't get it. If he wouldn't have slid for that ball and Garnacho wasn't there, we'd have gone, why isn't he breaking his neck to try and touch the ball? But the point is, some people, they see one thing they don't like, or there's one bad result, and it's right, let's throw baby out with the bathwater and say everything's going to be crap. And from my perspective, I just sort of feel like you guys are not in a rebuild stage, but there is a transitional period with the new manager. There are going to be some ups, and even with the team, because you haven't signed anybody, there's going to be some ups and downs this season. There's no doubt, but it isn't your player's fault, and it isn't your manager's fault that your club haven't bought him anybody. So, what was that great line from the Hunger Games? Remember who the real enemy is. You know what I'm saying? Remember who the actual person to blame.
John W. Henry, baby.
No, it isn't.
Yes.
There's not a single Liverpool player in your squad.
Today.
There's not a single Liverpool player in your squad who is accountable for your club not buying new players. Don't take it out on Diaz or Gravenberch or Endo. They're not good enough, or they're not good enough at that position, or they're not consistent enough. If your club doesn't replace them, don't abuse the player. Speak about your football club, because they're in control. And let's have it right as well. You guys have been in a good position for a long time. This is kind of like some of these things should have been addressed. Your midfield should have been addressed years ago, especially the kind of DM role, and it hasn't been. That's no one that's in your squad's fault. And I just feel like the modern day fan, sometimes we can get a little bit, like the amount of times we take it out on the player that we don't like. It's weird. Like, I'm really happy to see Scott McTominay leave today. I've never really blasted him on very many match reactions. People were like, why are you harsher on Pogba and Bruno? And because they're 10 times the player he is. Like, Scott McTominay starting is a club issue, not a Scott McTominay issue. He shouldn't be starting for Man United. It shouldn't have happened, But yeah, it's the modern day fan. Super chat here says problem with the club, or rather the disconnect, is that the club will shell out money when they think it's right, but not if they don't think there's one available. At the moment, they just don't think there is anybody.
Yeah, but here's the thing: we cannot speak out of both sides of our mouth. Because Mike will tell you this as well, even maybe to his shock, as someone who watches my channel, he'll tell you this. The truth, I was telling people to calm down 2 months ago because I said Slot is assessing the squad. Okay, he assessed it. He said he needed a DM. Let's all be logical. None of us were a fly in the room. But Arne Slot did not knock. Hi, Richard, get me Zubimendi or no one. That's not what he said. And remember, Arne Slot 2 months ago, I praised Liverpool for bringing him to be the head coach, not the manager. So he's not responsible for any transfer decisions. That's why I said it like 2 weeks ago. I said from now on, I'm not blaming Slot for any of this. At this point, it isn't his fault, because there is no way he assessed the squad and said, yeah, I don't need anyone. It's either Zubimendi or no one else. Let's not act like Slot, who needed to assess the Liverpool squad, was out there watching Sociedad and said, I'm only going to sign Zubimendi. So that is a club decision. That's a huge decision. That's Edwards' decision, whoever the hell. And I'm not going to play the blame game. I'm raising the middle finger to all three. FSG, and Richard Hughes and Michael Edwards. Whoever it is, I don't give a shit whose fault it is as an institution. Because the truth of the matter is, when you sign a new player, when you get a new manager, you are expected to back the manager with players that help him. I simply want Arne Slot to be helped. I want Mo and Trent and Virgil and Alisson to be helped. We need to help these players. And that's it. So you cannot, and there's an analogy I always use. Look, we cannot just say tomahawk steak or I'm going to starve to death. Because there's Chinese food and Italian food and Japanese food and multiple different cuisines which have very good food. Exactly. So, okay, Zubimendi, let's assume Zubimendi was the best option available in the entirety of the market. I'll shake your hand, no problem. Varela's still an option. Ederson is still an option. There's so many options in the DM position out there in world football. Go get one of them.
Well, I think that the question is wrong, right? Like the way that the question is phrased, I think has a lot to do with what the answer should be. Because ultimately, when you look at it, I don't think that it's that Liverpool see that there's no one else that they need that matches the right profile. I think it's that essentially what they're telling us is that they've assessed the options out there and they believe that the better gamble is to buy into people like Bajcetic and Curtis Jones and even like Trey and Yoni, and basically say we think that these players are good enough to do the jobs of the people that we would be bringing in. Now, the real question should be: are you in line with that gamble, or are you against that gamble? Do you agree or do you disagree against that assessment of the squad? And personally, I disagree. I think that the squad needs a couple more experienced players to not have to rely on those people. I mean, one of which didn't play at all last season because of growing pains, and the other who's quite literally 18 years old. So, to me, it's just more about, do you think that the gamble is worth it? I don't. I think that you need one or two.
And the guy that we played, we sold them as well.
Yeah, exactly. So it's just a matter of, and like, here's the thing though. If it works, they're absolute geniuses. So like, this is like the dilemma that we're in as Liverpool fans, because if this ends up working out and we're challenging come January, and all it takes is, all right, we've assessed the squad, we've been here for 4 months, we're 2 points off the top. All we need is this guy. Boom, you're an absolute genius. But the thing is that if you're a genius early on, usually people come at you like you're crazy. People called Steve Jobs crazy. People called, Ray Kroc crazy. It's just like, that's just the nature of the game. So, if you're going to say that we're being negative, we're complaining, it's like, that's just the natural reaction to a crazy.
But Mike, here's the issue for me, right, with this whole conversation. The problem is the following. I'm going to treat football as a science. I'm going to treat it as 1 + 1 = 2, even though sometimes 1 + 1 is not equal to 2 in football. But we have had 4 years of Liverpool not winning the league to think of and assess exactly what happened in those 4 years, regardless whether it was with a different manager or whoever. Because guess what? 4 years later, Alisson, Trent, Virgil, and Mo is still the spine. One thing that Chelsea did in their 20 years where they were winning league titles and winning Champions League and whatever, is they surrounded the spine with fresh blood, with new players who can help improve the team.
He does that every season.
Now, you guys know this as Liverpool content creators specifically. 4 years ago, we were told Curtis Jones is good enough. 4 years ago, we were told Elliott is good enough. 4 years ago, we were told rely on youngsters. So I'm not just gonna change, my energy a year later, because the science proves that I can't rely on Jota, I can't rely on Konate. They're both injury prone. The science proves that Diaz is not going to do this for 38 Premier League games. Nunes is not going to do this for 38 Premier League games. Blah, 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 blah. Let's not mention all the reasons all over again. But everyone knows you need help.
I think as well, Liverpool, and this is where I will defend people like Hassam's takes. You did it with Van Dijk, where you wanted him, you couldn't get him because of the situation with you in Southampton. You didn't buy somebody else, you waited and you bought him. But I feel like that example, which is what the better part of 7 years ago now, has always given FSG and Edwards too much credit. It was always, we just won't buy players. We wait for our number one target or we don't buy. But the problem is, in the last few years, it was going to be Bellingham, it was going to be Caicedo, it was going to be and you haven't ended up getting them. So you're at a point where this is where a grown-up conversation has to take place. Because if you were to sit in front of the room and say that's the real mantra of the club, we only buy a number one target or nobody. It's like, yeah, but in the last 5 years, we've missed out on loads of our number one targets, and we're still only a stone throw away from winning the league. Can't we amend that policy to be, well, we signed number 1, 2, or 3? Because you would have definitely, if you wouldn't have signed Bellingham, but signed somebody close to his level and was in your team now, if you'd have signed a world-class DM, if you would have signed another attacker that's at Mane's level, and that's attainable for a club your size and as wealthy as you might have won one more league title. You might have won another Champions League title. And I think that, and I know some people saying, Terry, this is match analysis. We've done the match analysis and we're talking on a deeper level now. That's what we do in every single show. That is where I think the criticism is warranted. I don't think you're being spoilt brat. You're essentially saying we're brilliant.
We aren't.
But we could literally go a little bit further. We could, if a City fan was like, I'm just not happy because we've won all these trophies, but we didn't hit 100 points every year, I'd say, shut up. You're being stupid. But Liverpool could have done as a club a little bit more than they have, and maybe that reward would have been much bigger and better.